So after the Mark Hunt fight, I'll go back to this. Something happened with USADA, and nobody's talked about it, including me, because none of us really got it. It kind of went under the radar. Something got flagged with USADA. Where does that stand right now? Are you in a mess with these guys?
Well, I mean, not so much a mess. It's just that, there's a trace molecule that was found in my urine sample the night of the fight. It said that I could have possibly taken an anabolic substance 6 weeks before the fight, because they're saying that, by the time that, the chemical breaks down, 6 weeks later, this is what it would resemble. And then my counter was, yeah, but you guys showed up at my door 6 weeks before the fight. You guys drug tested me then with urine and blood. So you're saying that I took this substance 1 or 2 days and then I stopped taking it? And they're like, well, yeah, that's what the report shows. I'm like, well, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Well, I've taken TRT treatment in the past, from a doctor. The doctor didn't tell me just to take a pill once and I'm good. It was a treatment that I had to take injections, twice a week, or, and then you don't see results or start feeling better until weeks into it. I don't know anybody that does any kind of hormone therapy is going to tell you that, 1 or 2 times is going to do you good and you're good for the next 2 months. You're going to see any kind of results. In fact, actually, the more I've actually looked into it, more to the contrary. If you were to go ahead and take an injection or take a pill with any kind of anabolic outside substance and quit taking it, now you don't even get the effect of what you took. And on the top of that, whatever your body was producing, you just shut it down, because your body, shuts it down quickly when you, introduce any outside substances. So, then basically, I'm looking at the USADA guys. We're at my kitchen table, staring back and forth at each other. And like, I hear what you're saying, so you tell us what you took. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, it could be a substance, or, something you ate. It could be, something, they told me that, clenbuterol was discovered in Mexico meat. There could be a case of something along those lines. Supplements, let's test everything through. I'm like, guys, I don't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. I can give you the supplements I take, but as far as what restaurants I've been to and where I've been exposed to for the last 8 weeks, I wouldn't even begin to know how to start to help you out.
Yeah, and see, a lot of people, excuse me, Frank, a lot of people don't speak this language because it does get very complicated, but I do understand it. And when I read that there's only been a couple of articles out, and when I read the very first one, that was the thing that stood out with me. I go, wait a second. He was tested 6 weeks before with urine and blood and was clean, and now he's got a trace molecule. That means he had to take it after that last test six weeks ago and before the fight, and time for it to break down so low that it was a trace molecule. It just doesn't exist. The stupidity factor would be beyond, and you're not a stupid guy. And I went through the TRT stuff too. When you go through that, you get an education. You start to learn about that. I'm going, Frank's just not, he's not going to do that. That's just not going to happen. And I think that their first test clears you from the second test, because, again, how could you break it down that fast? And I don't know that would hold up in a court of law. I'm just saying, as a guy that does speak the language, I read that and go, well, this doesn't add up. One crosses out the other.
Yeah, that's kind of what I went on. And more or less it drew more questions than really gave answers. That's why I looked at them and said, well, why don't you tell me what could I have been exposed to that could leave this trace molecule? And, basically, it's up to me to try to prove that, where the molecule came from, how it was introduced to my system. And, and I understand what they're saying. I'm like, you're right. It's in my urine. I get what you're saying. It didn't just jump, it didn't just create itself, so somehow it was exposed to it. But at the end of the day, if we just use rationale, people take anabolic steroids to gain an edge, to build muscle, to change the physique, whatever the case may be. There's no anabolic steroid that you take that you don't need to take for weeks at a time to get a result off of. This isn't a 1 or 2 times, I'm just going to take it and be exposed to it type of scenario. Because you guys yourselves blood and urine tested me before the 6 weeks out and the night of the test, I think that eliminates the fact that I wasn't on a cycle. I didn't try to do a cycle. It wasn't like you found some molecule that, was untestable, and all of a sudden now I'm the one that, I thought maybe I could flip the system by taking it. This has been on the books for a while. Anybody who can Google it can find out that no, this is a testable molecule and or substance, and you're going to get caught if you take it. and the time frame shows that there's no advantage. Like, what advantage was it have for me to go ahead and take this for a couple days and then stop? Especially what I know from the TRT treatment. I know that one of the reasons for taking it is if you take an outside drug, it shuts your own system down. So unless I was looking to completely sabotage myself, there has to be another answer. And as far as looking for an edge, obviously that's not the answer.
Oh, definitely not. And then, again, it gets confusing, but I understand this. USADA knocks on your door and takes the first sample 6 weeks earlier. You have no way to know that the next test is 6 weeks away. USADA is very well known for coming right back the next day. They get a hotel, they stay in town, they come back the next day, see who wants to, play that game. They'll come back 3 or 4 days later. It wasn't as though you knew you had 6. The whole thing is just very bizarre.
Well, actually, I did know I had 6 weeks. Because that's the thing, like we always make jokes. Passing a urine test the night of the fight, you hear people all the time on the internet say that's an IQ test. It's the random test that people don't know how to pass. Because, there's certain drugs that you can take that are out of your system, in a certain amount of time. But as far as the night of the fight, I know that I'm being drug tested the night of the fight. So if all of a sudden I can pass a random drug test I had no clue was going to show up at my door, and the night of the fight, April 19th, or March 19th, I know I'm pissing in a cup. Why at that point would I not be able to pass that test if I'm somebody that's going to go down that route?
Yeah, and I understand that. My point was, yes, you knew you were going to be tested on fight night, but they could have showed up to your door 5 times between the 6 weeks out and the fight. That's all I meant. Yeah. It's not as though you took that test and go, all right, I'm clear, next test is fight night. It doesn't work that way. They could have showed up the next day, 5 days later, 3 more times. I'll take Chad Mendez, for example. He's been tested like 6 times. They've showed up at his house, and he's going, guys, how many of these things do I have to pass before you just quit poking my darn arm? But it doesn't work that way. Anyhow, fine. So I